Those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. Do you know any of Pennsylvania's history? Where did our ancestors come from, how they lived, and how it was for them to grow up in coal country? More than 100 years ago, the eyes of the nation and the eyes of the world were fixed intently on the remarkable people of northeastern Pennsylvania's Anthracite region. It was so because it fell to them to perform the back-breaking work of fueling the extraordinary industrial growth of the United States of America. They rose to the task with uncommon fortitude, unbound energy, and an unbridled spirit. These people, emigrating from 20 countries, came to northeastern Pennsylvania to escape poverty and persecution, to build a future filled with hope and opportunity. They ended up building a new nation, the strongest and wealthiest nation that the world has ever known. All they really asked for in return was to be treated fairly, with dignity, and place where their dreams could be achieved and where they and their children could live free. For a time during the 1800s and early 1900s, coal was king in many parts of Pennsylvania. Mine owners made huge fortunes providing the hard, black fuel, and the mines created jobs for countless men throughout the region and other parts of the United States. The work, though, was difficult and dangerous, and men weren't the only ones who risked their health or their lives bringing the coal to waiting customers. Some boys, especially older ones, worked in the mines. Many more boys worked in the breakers, sorting jagged chunks of coal by hand and breathing the black dust the machinery spewed into the air. These youngsters, called breaker boys, were usually the sons of miners who worked deep underground. The boys were mostly unknown outside their small hometowns. In the early 1900s, children went to school and played with friends. They spent long summers in the sun, swimming and fishing and playing ball. They ate ice cream and read books and caught bugs. Their houses were kept warm with coal fires in the winter. They had good food to eat and nice clothes to wear. But at the same time, there were many poor children who had and did none of these things. They didn't know how to read, they didn't have time to play, and some of them rarely saw the summer sun. These children had to work all day, 6 days a week, all the year round. They worked in the factories, in the coal mines, and in the fields, sometimes for 12 hours without stopping. In the year 1900, over 2 million American children under the age of 16 had jobs. Most of them came from poor families who needed the money. Now, please listen to the testimony of Mr. Hasty.
Children, many of them boys worked in the breakers. That's a huge building where they processed the coal after it came out of the mines. But they worked in very, very dusty conditions, and their health was affected by that. Now, my two grandfathers worked in the mines when they were little boys. My one grandfather worked in the mines in Wales before he came to this country. But both of my grandfathers died of what they used to call miner's asthma, what they call black lung now. Their lungs were stuffed with coal dust, and there was no room for air. A terrible death. Both my grandfathers died of lung disease from working in the mines.
There were other jobs for boys, like in this picture it shows a door tender, or a nipper. The job of a door tender was to open the doors when a minecart full of coal came by. It was a very dangerous job because if the boy fell asleep, the minecart could crash into the doors and someone could get seriously injured. It was also probably the most boring job in the coal region because the boys had to sit there for hours underground and wait until a minecart comes by so they can open the doors. Now please listen to the statement of Dr. Peter Yasinchuk.
Down and under in the mine was the door boy. The door boy was a man, a young guy. He was supposed to be 13 or 14, but many times he was not. And he sat on a block of wood because there were two doors down in the mine. And the doors were what they called the gangway, which was actually with the railroad for the cars that come through loaded with coal. And the idea of the doors was they acted as a baffle meaning you push the air over on the sides because the men were not working in that gangway. That was only for the railroad track. They were working up on the sides, which were called the chutes, C-H-U-T-S, and headings, H-E-A-D-I-N-G-S. That's where they were working and sending the coal down into the railroad cars. And so the doors, again, the baffle doors were kept closed. So he sat there waiting to hear the sound of the cars coming through. Then he jumps up and he opens the doors and lets the cars go through. When the cars go through, then he closes the doors, so the air again will go up to the men working up on the sides.
There was also the mule tender. It was a boy who was in charge of taking care of the mules in the coal mines. While men and boys worked down underground in the coal mines, women and younger children were picking coal to heat their homes. Now please listen to a story of Mr. Darrow.
The wages were so small that the miners couldn't afford to buy a house of their own. So they lived in the company houses, and they were all the same. They were not insulated, were very cold in the wintertime, very hot in the summertime. And you heated them with coal, and they expected you to buy coal from the coal company. And if you didn't have enough money, the younger children went out with the mother. And on these big banks that were the cone banks, what came from the breaker that wasn't the coal, a lot of times some coal would get mixed in with it. The mother would go with the younger children, and they would dig through all this stuff and pick out little pieces of coal, and they would, the little cute children would go there and help also, so they could bring it home so they could heat their homes in the wintertime.
Those who were not occupied in working in the coal mines, mainly women and young girls, had other jobs like working in the silk mill. Now please listen to the testimony of Mary Fair.
Now I went to work when I was 15. After school, I would leave and go to work, and I worked in the silk mill for 50 cents an hour, weaving glass material for the Army. And I was there for 10 years until I got married and left. But as I say, many a times I made more money than my dad, because the miners didn't work steady. And you had to listen for the whistle to blow every night, whether you had work or not in the morning. Life was hard. Life was hard at that time.
Adults and children sometimes went out and picked huckleberries to earn a little bit more money.
If we try to make some money also, one of the big areas that people did around here, and children went and they picked not blueberries but huckleberries. Blueberries grow on large, tall plants, and they're easy to pick. You stand. But the huckleberry bushes around here are tiny bushes. They're only about this high. So you really have to bend over and you have to pick them. And again, if the younger children, their fingers, they could pick these berries a lot easier. They could move under the leaves and pick them. And I'd go with my mother or with my father every day when the huckleberries were out.
People had many other jobs, as you can see in the next two pictures. As Mary Fair stated in the interview, life was hard at that time, which is true, but life wasn't just hard. It was probably one of the most difficult things that the people had to go through in all the 200 years of American history. But then, in 1938, something wonderful happened, and Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act. This act abolished child labor from the United States forever. But many children continued to work even after the law was passed.